Hello, everybody. You are in Inner Outer Space and Inner Outer Space Harmony. And we're coming off of this past Easter week, which was also before that a full moon. And before that, like there was April Fool's Day, and then there was Passover before that. And so like, it's all this weird, crazy stuff. And what seems to have happened in New York is that we've gone straight from winter into summer, which is really weird. And yet I kind of enjoy it because it's so nice outside. So a lot of strange stuff is happening in my own body because of that. And I want to just name one other thing. I got my Johnson's & Johnson's vaccine yesterday. And so my arm is, I'm definitely feeling it. And I had these dreams about the medicine of the vaccine and my subconscious kind of like in this dance together. And I had just listened to a podcast. It was my friend, his name is Michael Taft, and he's a meditation teacher who does this really amazing podcast called Deconstructing Yourself. And he talked to this woman, God, I think her name is Alice Washum. And she is, they talk about, she's a Zen, not a Zen, a Dharma meditator, a Buddhist meditator, and she teaches it. And she also does ayahuasca and leads ayahuasca groups in Peru with, you know, with this ceremony and this ritual of Buddhism underlying that what it is. And she talks to her people about the like we need to boost up, we need to speed up the rate at which people are awakening to the fact that we're really connected to the earth and each other and all this kind of stuff. And so she talks to her Buddhist teachers, like the reason I'm doing ayahuasca is because once you do that, you really wake up to that fact. So she talks about the medicine of ayahuasca. And I felt like after I took that shot, like my whole night was just having this weird relationship with the medicine of Johnson & Johnson, this vaccine in my arm. And it was like, I kept going back into it over and over. So I just want to name that thing. And that is that these subconscious processes are happening to us all the time. And we're in these dances with them. And so for me, one of my reasons that I do offer this is because I feel like this work really can help us find new ways of landing in our bodies that are more comfortable and more, I want to say, successful in the way that we relate to other people and in the way that we inhabit our bodies. So maybe a better word would be skillful, to use like a Buddhist way of saying it, like I skillfully inhabit and be me. I can be in this person of me, and I can do it in a way that's not harming other people or myself, that has a gentleness to it. And I feel like naming this is really important for me to name right now, because I feel like that just for a lot of things that are circling in the orbit of my life and in the rooms that I'm leading, like this idea of intention and purpose and how important those are to keep coming back, know what we know in our body, right? When have we layered in the learning enough that we can own it or say, or even not own it, but teach it. Be like, you know, I learned this from so-and-so. They probably know it much better than me, but this is how I understand it. This is how it comes in my body. So that we're passing on this information, maybe just from being around other people. So maybe we're just modeling some of the behaviors or some of the enlivening, some of the integration, or maybe we're talking about what it means. Or I noticed this thing that was really interesting to me today when I started opening up this box of why are we here? What are we doing? And why does it matter? Right? So just with you could answer this by unmuting and saying something, or you could just take it in and think about it. But does anyone want to say anything about answering that? Does anybody want to add their voice to this conversation before we get going? Yeah, go ahead, Lindsay.
This weekend I was doing something with Martha Eddy, and it occurred to me that what we were doing was finding pathways. And so the pathways is sort of in my head. These are pathways inwards, and recognizing when it's time to go inwards, or when it's time to go out, or so recognizing and then having a way to get there. That's partially what you were saying. It's a little piece.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a million answers to this question, right? So, and I just feel like when we fine tune, then like the orchestra plays better, right? It's like when we go, oh, this is what I'm doing, or this is what this is like. And for me, like the analytical mind loves that too, even though it's like, it's way too complex for any of us to really understand in any, you know, there's too much going on. But if we can tune into the strings and the sort of vibrations that really hum with us and vibrate with us, then woo, we're super lucky. It's great. Anyone else want to say anything else or notice anything else? You spoke to this in the beginning already, Hanan, with the, and thank you. I want to acknowledge that. Thank you. I really appreciate all the things that you say. And it's great. I'm glad it's doing something for you. So let's start. Did I give you a chance to answer? Always feel free to like wave your hands and break in if you need to. Let's start with these breaths, because I want to play again with this distillation of the theta breath into the the not quite theta breath into the Luna breath. And so the theta breath is the soft S or TH, like, so it's not like where it's hard. It's like, it's just slowing down the exhale and kind of creating this sort of bifurcating that people say that it creates a sense of midline and also this forwardness. So that's our first breath. And then the second breath is going to be taking the tongue, and instead of having it right behind the teeth, it's just going to go back. So it's like this. So my tongue's kind of fattening. It's like instead of being right at my tip and flat, it goes back and fattens, and it doesn't have that, it just has a. And then the next sound, the Luna breath that we're going to do, is going to be as if you're saying ha without any sound and your mouth is closed. So it's inside your head, and it's almost like also the most distilled ujjayi breath, if you know that from yoga. Or you could also think of it as the sound of, somebody said that, I think in this group, it might have, yeah, the sound of a shell, the sound of the ocean in your ear in a shell. So it's really distilled outer space. So let's just go with that breath, and you can move as you need to move throughout this whole thing. If you need to move, if you don't need to move, that's fine. So Michael, we're just going to do theta breath into distilled theta breath, which is the tongue a little bit back, into Luna breath. And I'm not going to even say when you need to change, but we'll do this for 1 or 2 minutes. So if you just need to do one theta breath and then do the other breath, the distilled, and then the Luna, that's fine. Or if you just stay in theta the whole time, also fine. And anytime you need resting breath, take resting breath. So let yourself regulate and take care of yourself in whatever way you need to. So we'll just start with that for a few minutes. Eyes open or closed. And then just noticing wherever your body is now and letting yourself return to the surface, to the group, in taking as long as you need. And just noticing, yeah, where you are, what you feel, what's going on. I think before talking anymore, I want to play with this idea of head-tail connection. So you could take your hand on your sacrum or on your tailbone and the other hand on your head. I think I'll start it standing up, but you could do this. I want to do it in 3 ways. I want to do it standing, seated, and laying down, which is probably the wrong order. We probably should do it laying down, then seated, then standing. But because it's easier for me right now, I'm just going to stand first. So you could do it the other way or any order, standing, seated, laying down. We're just going to play with this relationship of head to tail. And what I'm inviting you to do is imagine, and this is a Liz Koch thing, that your spine is a river. And so as you're in your movement, you can take your hands off whenever that feels good. If it feels good to stay connected with that head tail, go ahead. But imagine that your spine is a river and that the river of your nervous system is routing out into your arms and legs, and just inviting sort of a fluid sense from your brain through your spinal cord, out through your arms and legs, out through your bits and pieces, wherever they're going. And just inviting micro movement into that, letting your weight shift, letting your hands come down whenever that feels good. If it feels good to keep it there, to find that relationship, go for it. But really feeling this sense of this wholeness, of this river of movement from your head to your tail, out through your arms, out through your legs, and just feeling what that is, to give it some freedom and to ask into your own body, what would feel good? What would feel delicious? What would be interesting? What do I need right now? What kind of movement? And even how is that water expressing? Are there fast places or slow places? Or even sort of stagnant parts? Just feeling into that from your head to your tail, out through your limbs. And I want to throw in one more idea. Imagine that you're an alien who's just landed in this human body for the first time. You have no idea what it could do, how it moves. So you're in this sort of what's possible. How can I move this thing? What does it do? So coming from a place of I know absolutely nothing into, oh, it can do this. It can do that. What are the things that pop into your awareness? What things can you feel in your body, from your head to your tail? Maybe you don't even know it's a head and a tail. What awarenesses pop in for you? And also, you can feel free to look at the group at times and just see what's popping in for other people. And of course, my cat has stolen my chair. A little chubbo, taking up the whole thing. And so I'm going to move. I'm actually going to go down to the floor since the cat's still in the chair. I'm just going to get down onto the floor and do the same thing. So once I'm on the floor, I'm going to play again with head tail and just finding micro movement or maybe big movement in the river of head tail. You could do this on a chair. You could be seated, or you can get down to the floor. Just letting yourself listen into your body and sort of find a tempo or a rhythm. And so one thing that in the continuum work, what they like to do is keep finding novelty. So if you find that you're getting into a pattern that keeps repeating, see if you can change it. You could change the space you're moving within. You could change the time. You could make it bigger or smaller, or you could just totally change the direction. So if it's possible, imagine that you're continually changing. So it's never the same movement twice. It's always something different. Each moment is a new moment. And you can let yourself really move. It doesn't have to stay on your back. You can be seated. You can let it move in whatever way feels interesting and curious. And if you've been down there for a while and you're ready to move into seated, go ahead and try seated, either on a chair or on your butt. Anyway, that, of course, the cat has won the chair over here, so I'm on my butt. Yeah. Fabian's dog also involved in the process. So finding, again, novel movement, new ways. Maybe it's rhythms, maybe it's shifting your flow from very free flow to more bound flow. Maybe it's balancing back and forth between some lightness and some strength, just shifting your effort life around. I'm just using the Laban language, however that lands for you, just take it in like that. Just giving your body permission to differentiate in new ways, in different ways. And then from this space, wherever you are, whether you're seated, standing, laying down, I want you to imagine all the joints in your body. So all the places where a bone comes together with another bone. And imagine like that whatever's holding you together is very light and easy. So the relationship, again, in your alien body that you've just landed in, you don't know what it can do. What are these joints? What is possible? Taking in as much of the body as you can in that exploration. Like if we were going to say Laban or the Vartanian terminology, we'd kind of go, what can flex and extend? What can fold and unfold? Like different things. So we'd be playing with what's possible in Aisha, welcome. Playing with what's possible we're in this middle of this improvisational exploration, and we're playing with our joints. So we're just seeing what can do what. Yeah, again, if we were going Bartenia fundamentals, we'd be folding, we'd be unfolding, we'd be flexing and extending. But if you're just in your alien body, you can move in any way, or your human body landing in it for the first time, no idea what it can do. What can these joints do? Where are the places that the bones can move from? And try it in different sort of relationships to gravity. So you could try it from all fours. You could be on your side, you could be on your back, you could be standing. You can play with going away from and going toward the ground. Like, what is this thing called gravity? Lifting and returning. And this could be done standing or seated, but finding different ways of rising and falling, going up and going down. Oh, I just got a nice big release in my back. And I see that Fabian's dog is relentlessly involved. Good. And then let's bring it back in together and just have a little quick check-in and see figure out where we're going to go from here. I'm going to have to steal at least part of the seat from my cat. So what did you notice? Like what things or what popped up? I have to show you him. He's complaining that I've taken over a tiny little edge of the seat. He's very vocal. What did you notice? What popped up for you? Anything interesting? Anything curious?
So am I not muted?
Yep, you're good.
So I very much enjoyed the first part, which was the head to tail and with the hand, because that's very helpful to feel the, you know, the pressure, the little bit of weight, the warmth. And then I had a very nice size for sitting because I have this small stool. And that was very nice because I immediately felt the articulations and the spiraling, and it was very easy to go from floor to that small seat and standing. Feels liberating in the articulations.
Lindsay, it looked like you were going to say something.
When we first started just arriving in an alien body and exploring from there, it was interesting because my impulse was to start inner and go outer, I guess as far as kinesphere or whatever. And yeah, just that is like a starting place from observing it in that way, or at least for me. And then also that was just lovely because for the first little while, my spine was just so tight and not moving. And I had to kind of force some water through to get some moving. And then it just felt really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. Fabienne, I know you have to go in a minute. Anything to say?
Yes, it's the idea of having a beginner's mind when you learn a new move, so that you open yourself to the experience and learn more from the move. Something I did regularly, but it's the first time I'm a beginner in my own body. The first time I discover the moves I can do, I mean, without preconception, prejudice.
Yeah, sometimes I think like, you know, the way, how would humans move if we hadn't had like, let's say Western humans, because there are indigenous cultures that just move the way that they move, right? But like Western cultures that had like corsets and all these things and like rigid body stuff, like what about our spines and like our organs? Like, you know, all of that stuff is still somewhere in the residual memory of our cellular tissue, you know, our cells and all that stuff. So it's like, wow. So I often think, you know, if we were born and we weren't growing up seeing our parents move, like so much, like there's the sort of genetic pattern, but there's also the modeling of how you hold a body, you know, how you move or don't move a body. And even the touch, like we get so much information. Like when I hug my mom now, like I'm always kind of like shocked at how hard her body feels. I shouldn't say that, but it's true. I'm like, oh my God, like, wow. And I'm like, holy moly, like how much of that hardness have I learned also in my body and what can I let go of? And we also talk about tension sometimes as being like, oh, just relax. But if I could just relax, it's a process, it's a pattern, that's being held in there. If I could just relax, everything would be fine, right? But I can't just relax. Like my body has to learn something new and different. It has to find a different way of being. So I feel like when we come into our body with the idea that we don't know anything and what's possible, and come in with curiosity as opposed to, oh, I have to fix this or change that. It's a very different way of entering. Yeah. Anything else to say? I know my two people have to leave in a couple of minutes. Bye, Hanan. Yeah, bye, Fabienne. Well, maybe we'll shift it a little bit earlier. And also just to welcome Esha. If it's Isha or Esha, I'm not sure, but my new friend from.
Oh, yeah. you said it right the first time. It's Aisha, even though it's spelled with an E. And I'm sorry I don't have my video on, but I actually have no room in here to move. So I'm kind of moving things around instead of joining you. And thanks for letting me in so late as well.
Oh, my rooms tend to be incredibly open. Like people can come and go as they need to. So yeah, feel free. And the other thing I want to offer you is that even if you don't have a lot of movement, a lot of space, there's still a possibility for a lot of movement. And so that very thought and the fact that Michael's laying down there on the floor, I think I want to play with these ideas of reach space. So in Laban Bartenia, if we talk about like near reach space, like what's close by, I'm going to do this standing up, and you may want to, but like what's within the tight near kinesphere of your body. And maybe that's going to be a very self-touch place. Like how can we move in the really near reach space, the near kinesphere, the stuff that's really close by. Or you could imagine that you're in, and this doesn't even exist anymore these days, a really tight space with a bunch of other people. Oh my God, what would that be like? Where like maybe, you're trying not to squish into everybody else, or maybe you're just trying to squish your way through the other people, imagining other people. Oh my God, how hedonistic is that at this point? So let's start to move that out into a medium reach space where we're not going to the very edge of our kinesphere, but we're finding like this place in the middle. And I want to add that this might be a very elbowy, knee space. So we're not going to open all the way, but we're going to stay in these places where we can reach out sort of to the elbow reach or to our extended leg knee reach. And let's kind of scoop around our bodies with that. So we would call this different ways of shaping, like shaping our bodies. And again, letting that sort of three-dimensional exploration happen. So it's happening through lots of spiraling, but also happening through the organs. So this whole participatory event is going on. It's not just my arms and legs moving around the outside, but my whole torso, head, tail, again, wiggling from the head to the tail, finding that whole thing in this sort of medium, mid-range reach space. Just feeling how that is. And then from there, starting to let it go into a far reach space, big kinesphere, taking up space. Of course, that may not be possible in your room, but if it's possible. And what does it feel like to be big compared to being in that small space? And I also want to offer that we have this resource of the group that we can check in with the group, seeing what's going on in other rooms. Yeah. And then starting to make a little dance that's moving from near to middle to far, or far to near to middle, but that you're changing your reach spaces. So it's, and just note for yourself where you are, like, oh, I'm out on the edges, I'm in far reach space, or I'm really tight, I'm in near reach space, or I'm right there in the middle. Just giving yourself that awareness of where you are, in which kind of reach, which kind of, yeah. And what kind of pathways are going from the center to the edge? Are you shooting out there, or are you circling and cycling? Or are you carving along the edges? Is it sort of a peripheral thing happening, or is it central thing, or is it, we call it transverse when it's in the middle? It's neither periphery or central, center to edge. So those are that's just Laban terminology, and you can use it to think, just to give yourself more possibility of range. How can I move? And then I just want to throw in some more imagery of, like, if I were the wind, where would I be going? And how is my wind movement? Or maybe it's just a light breeze. What's the light breeze movement? So really working with the idea of air. And as we're working with the idea of air, you can connect in the breath, the lungs. And if you feel like adding any kind of breath sounds to it, go ahead. Just feeling what's interesting and fun. And then from there, let's start to bring it into these dimensions again. So again, I don't know if we ever really were there today, but we have been many other times. So let's just play with the vertical, the up and downness. And it could be one part is going up, one part is going down, but sticking into this vertical dimension, just up, up and down, finding your up and downness with your body. Maybe contralateral movement there, maybe body one half and then the other. Up and down. Again, the connection to the earth and heaven. So connecting heaven and earth through your body, through the center. Very much there's some system, oh God, I think it's Strozzi, and they talk about the vertical as being your dignity. So finding your dignity. I like to think of that as just sort of like the me place, the I. Here I am. It's even the shape of an eye, up and down. And then let's move it to the side, which I like to think is the we place. We can also add some forward backwards. So instead of just staying perfectly in the horizontal dimension, we're going to make it into the horizontal plane with some gathering and scattering, filling up, letting go of. Yeah, allowing yourself to play with the idea of crossing midline and opening out. You know, coming in tight and then widening out. And from there, let's go into the forward backward dimension. So we were kind of going with horizontal dimension with plane, which has some forward backward, but let's add just forward backward, reaching straight forward, reaching straight backwards, being in the middle of that, feeling what that is. And then let's take it out of the limbs and let's just go into the torso. So we're finding, let's stick with backwards and forwards, finding the front space and the back space in our bodies without throwing our arms and legs around, but just finding forward and backward. Yeah, letting it ripple or cat-cow or however it feels interesting to move through that. And then starting to find some side, just the body. Just the torso, the weight shifting, maybe like you're pouring yourself onto one leg and then pouring yourself onto the other, or one part of your body. And then into the up and down. Maybe it's tiny, maybe it's just the breath. Lengthening and shortening with the breath. Getting tall or settling into the ground. And as you're in that, so I'm finding that as I'm doing my up and down, I really want to turn my head. I really want to add that side, like that somehow feels really yummy to me. So feel free to like be basically doing the main thing, but adding any other kind of spice to whatever your body needs so that you're getting, so that it feels good. You're not like locking yourself into something that doesn't feel right. And then letting yourself have total free flow of anywhere you want to go, your own exploration, as big or small as feels good. It might be tiny, it might be huge. And you may even just ping back and forth from the tiniest thing that you can do and still feel movement into the biggest thing that you can do. And what the difference between those big and small things are. It's amazing. Like I could be in a big theater with my eyeballs. I could be like in the farthest row back in like, you know, the top tier. But if somebody on stage moves their finger, I can probably see it. Right. So that's one thing, like live, seeing things live, seeing something live. Now, if I'm looking at something on a screen, I can see everybody's finger if they're moving, so if I'm close to it, all at the same time. But if I'm in a big theater, it's different. Just how we perceive movement. And like, so we're going to see movement. Often very small movement can be seen from very far away if we're focusing on that thing. I mean, I don't know if I could see it now because like I've got my 51-year-old eyeballs, but when I was in my 20s and 30s, probably my 40s, I could see really well. So, and we're drawn to movement. We're drawn to change. We're drawn to changes in movement. Yeah, so let's play with one more thing here. Let's play with the idea of gestural, some little, like, it's just a small, maybe just a head gesture, a hand gesture, a foot gesture, a shrug, and then full on postural whole body movement. So going from these kind of pinging back from something small and maybe subtle, that isn't that subtle, into something that's really obvious and huge. And I'm noticing when I go big, I want to go faster. And when I go small, I want to slow down. So maybe playing with like going big, slow, and going small, fast, just to play with the possibilities. See what your preferences are, and then try something a little different. So we're just trying to build some range so that we start to notice more things and go, oh, that's what's happening now. How interesting. And I feel like the Laban work and the continuum work to some degree offer this expansion of range and awareness of, oh, this is this thing. And when we start to put language to it or just experience it, we have more options, more possibilities for how we behave. So let's start just to bring it in again and just have another little check-in with anything that you're noticing or, that was particularly interesting to you. Go ahead.
Okay. It's open?
Yeah.
So that was very interesting to change the perspective from the speed. So to do fast, small, fast, and that was very interesting. And I feel like, first of all, I very much enjoy because when it's so free and flowing like that, it really feels like dancing at home, so which is great. And when it's small, I feel like it seems like almost like a memory kind of feeling, like inside, maybe nostalgic or something, and out is more the space, and here I come, and ready for me, those kind of things.
Yeah, I love that nostalgic. I feel like the same thing. Like as soon as I start moving my fingers kind of small and internal, it's like there's a story here, something's going on, right? It's telling something, or it's reminding me of a space in the past, right? Like to something. Yeah. Lindsay.
It was interesting when you asked us to switch. I think this is sort of maybe what Kathleen was saying too. When you asked us to switch from going into far space with speed to go slowly, it felt a little I had to rejig it in my mind, and then notice how there was more feeling or more presence, or a different feeling and a different presence in it, and maybe a bit more intimate, or maybe it conveyed something different. It did change what was conveyed, I think. For me, not sure where everybody else is with that.
Michael, you were very internal there. What was it? How was your experience?
You know, I started getting a little stuck about like if I should be applying the vertical, horizontal, sagittal in standard key or in body key, because I was laying down, right? Like, so I was like, okay, am I doing this with space or with my, so I was going back and forth and switching it, sometimes in space, sometimes in my body, whatever. And then at some point I was just like, just release it and just be where you are without having to define it, you know, and just feel what you're in. So that was nice to get to kind of go through that that analytical process and then go into letting it be movement for movement and experience.
Yeah.
And I started off the opposite. I started off with my small movements fast or quick and my big movements slow. So I was already in that. And then when you cued that, I was like, well, that's where I am. So I think I'll go to the one that you were doing and switch it to the other way.
Yeah, and it could always be different any given day, but I also just want to name to everybody else that Michael teaches this stuff too. So it's interesting when you when you're in the, yeah, like, oh, and then like seeing your mind get stuck on something, right? Like, which I think happened to you, Lindsay, too. Like, it's like, oh, wow. And then the permission to just be like, just move. Like, I have to say, like, so many times I'm in the playful connection room, which is in the embodiment circle on Friday, and I'm leading something in with a co-leader, and the co-host describes the plan that we're going to do in our breakout room. So we get in there and I really don't have any idea. Like I know what it's supposed to be, but I just kind of want to move and be in the moment of what's actually happening. And that's usually what I choose. Like I don't usually stick with the rules. But having said that, I just want to name this other thing that's been going on, and that is for most people, we can come into the group and we can sort of balance out our selfness and the groupness and work in a way that feels sort of harmonious. But I have a few people, no one who's here, who are just a little out of control and they're not honoring the group part of the thing. And it's like all this stuff is going all over the place. And I'm just now learning how to rein that in. And like, can we just bring it back to the body? Not somebody else's experience is happening way over there or anything. Like if we can just keep reining it in to where we are right now. And also this recognition that we are a group and we're not alone. We're not just here for ourselves. We're also here for this group and this planet and this, radiating outward, everybody else, the family. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And it's been an interesting thing. Yeah, thank you for that beautiful hug. It's been an interesting thing for me to be in these spaces that I'm offering and have these these divergent forces really running amok, and like, oh, now I have to rein in some boundaries, and now I have to start to mother a little bit when I didn't want to. That was never what I wanted to be doing. Yeah, exactly. So I just naming that because it's not happening here now. Like this is all good, but I've been noticing it in certain spaces. And I feel like when we're in these, like I want to offer a sense of permission and freedom, but if that becomes destructive, that's problematic, right? And people have to be able to read that whole thing, which in our American culture which is also pretty much Western culture, but especially American, of rugged individualism. It's all about me. And if I get to do what I want to do and fuck everybody else, like that is like so not going to work. So it's interesting to see where it lands in the room and how I either skillfully or completely crappily handle the situation. And I have to say, like, I've been like not that expert on it lately. So I feel like that's what I'm honing my skills. And of course, the people that are those people don't show up when you're in the mode to actually deal with the problem. But that's part of the funny thing. Anything to say about that, Michael? Because I know that you deal with this too. And probably like if you ever teach, go ahead, Lindsay.
Okay, I have a little page for intentional communities, and I've had people get really political about non-related stuff, and I've had to step into my boundaries a lot about it. They'll get into QAnon and why we need a community in response to QAnon stuff, and I'm like, no, stay on focus. This isn't about you. This isn't about arguing. This is about the subject. And so it was a different situation. It got quite argumentative, and I had to just block them. Somebody just told me, block the trolls. And I'm like, okay, that's not your situation.
Yeah.
But I also think I know at least I've noticed one person in the group who really seems to want to be seen, but that isn't what the class is about. The class is not like, hey, let me honor everything that's going on in your life. The class is about, let's share our body's experience in lava and related movement stuff. And so that person needs to find another way to be seen and witness, because they really need it. They're really asking for it.
Well, it's funny because the need to be seen also is so important. But I feel like the shadow side of things, so often the people that are complaining about a certain thing or behavior are also doing that thing or behavior. So it's like, oh, okay. Maybe we need the mirror aspect of what are you shooting off out there? But like I just did this whole self-care week with Mark Walsh, and I was like leading these self-care things. I'm like, oh my God, I need to really do what I'm saying and honor myself. And when I do take care of myself more and honor my boundaries and enforce them, everyone's happier. It's a better world, right? So it's an interesting thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm valuing both the individual and the collective. So I really like there to be space for both, right? And so sometimes the individual needs to process something to then be in the collective, but it's complex. How much processing do we do in a group that's not about processing? I think this is the same thing Lindsay was saying, and it's like, well, if it's a learning space and this learner needs to process something to be able to learn, right? It's like, okay, I kind of want to go there with the learner because I want the learner to be learning and I don't want her or him or they to get stuck, right? And yet, if it comes out by like attacking me personally as the leader, and whatever, that's like, it's a lot for me, to hold that, like really a lot, to hold that much like, wow, of energy. If it doesn't come at me like that way, I can hold it almost anything. But when it comes right at me, like with arrows, that's challenging when it's not really a process group. So I don't know, and I love the divergent stuff. And yet we are there to be a collective, right? With certain agreements.
Yeah. And it is this balancing of the individual within the group. It is like, okay, like we ultimately, oh, my internet connection's unstable. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Did I get stuck? Okay. Ultimately, it really is about this dance where we honor both sides of the individual and the group. And that's one of the Laban things. Like, and I have to say, I learned so much about that in the year that I studied Laban at the Laban Institute, because we had the same 13 people. We had a few different sets of teachers. And like in the very beginning, I had certain teachers that I liked and hated, not hated, but put my stuff on. And then by the end, it switched completely of who, like, I was like, wow, I was getting so much out of different teachers. And one of my teachers hated me. I was like, we just turned that one right around, but it was really funny. And I also feel like it's so important to discuss ethics in these places, because if the Laban Institute, when I was going there, was also doing meditative practices and really walking the walk of what it is, community practice. We had group process, but I don't think anything got processed in our group process. Like, I don't think it was ever clear what that really was, or, so it's really interesting. Yeah, I'm just fancy today. You asked that earlier. I was like, I just got to
I was
put
like, did you go to a job interview today or something? Like, look at you.
No, I just was like, I just need to put on some color.
Great.
All right. Anyone else want to say anything about that, about this idea? Because I feel like it keeps rising up. People are asking me about other people's ethics and this and that. And my thing is, if I haven't seen somebody do something wrong, I am not going to be on the bandwagon of trumping that person. But if I have seen them do something wrong, I'm just going to distance myself. I don't need to get in the ride. So, yeah. Anything to say,
I wanna be
Kathleen?
in places. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kathleen.
No, already it's for me, I don't know if I'm speaking about exactly the same thing, but I came to the group through internet. So I was working a long time with you, but in the shadow, nobody saw me. And there's something very convenient about that too, because then it's just like my process, my learning. And then I enjoyed it so much that I contacted Laura. And the way this works, Lindsay, you called me by my name. So I feel like little by little I'm entering a group, but I also feel strange because I'm not in the same country or the same time zone, and it started just off the internet. But I've been the first time I connected in live, I was very uncomfortable. So it was joining the group, but I'm from this virtual space. And but anyway, so it's a process to become also to feel like a member of a group.
Yeah.
It's not an automatic just because I'm here.
Yeah. And I just want to name that, Lindsay, you're in Canada, right? And Michael is in Mexico. And Fabian, who was here earlier, is in France. And Hanan is in London.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is really an international group. And none of us have ever met in person.
Okay, really? Oh.
Yeah.
So you fooled me.
Yeah.
You sure fooled me. I thought you were a group, like that you knew each other. That's amazing. That's even more amazing that you created this space online.
Well, it's just, because the groups that I'm showing it to are really awesome people. Like, thank you, Michael. I'll take that in. But it is, and I want to say, yeah, Michael wrote, I want to be in places where we can and do make mistakes, and there is a safety or agreement to be able to learn together when any of us makes a mistake. Yeah, I think that's super important, the value of belonging. Like the group, like, yes, I've brought it together and I'm teaching the stuff, but like, we're all sort of experts in many areas of being in our bodies. So it's like really nice to come into that place together, and then just to be able to offer different explorations. Yeah. And with new people, because to me, it's delightful to be around people that are different than me. Like, I do not want to be with a bunch of people that are all exactly like me. So that's one reason why I keep opening up. Like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Just, and to me, like, the richness comes from everyone's ideas and opinions and feelings about something. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. We've had our process. I'm going to shut off the recording. So now I don't think any of the, hold on, I'm going to stop recording.